Do you know one of history's bravest female warriors? A queen who rose up for revenge when her husband was killed, she was flogged, and her daughters were raped. A woman who gathered an army of 100,000, burned London, killed 70,000 to 80,000 Romans, and shook the Roman Empire. You've never heard her name, have you? Come on, let's discover together the incredible story of Boudica, ancient Britain's most legendary female leader. She is believed to have been born around 30 AD in what is now Colchester, Camulodunum, to an elite family. Like other ancient Celtic women, Boudica was trained as a warrior, including combat techniques and weapons use. A Roman historian later described the adult Boudica as a striking presence, very tall, with long red hair reaching down to her hips, usually wearing a very colorful tunic and a gold-necked torque. At 18 years old, Boudica married Prasutagus, a nobleman of the Iceni tribe in modern Norfolk in eastern England. Antidios, an older relative of Prasutagus, was probably king of the Iceni until their rebellion in 47 AD. Prasutagus succeeded him as king. The Iceni were one of the tribes that agreed to become a client state of Rome. This essentially meant that as long as their leader lived and carried out Rome's orders when desired, they could maintain a level of sovereignty within the Roman Empire. In 47 AD, a short-lived, unsuccessful rebellion against Rome was launched by the Iceni. This rebellion may have led to Prasutagus' rise to leadership of the tribe, perhaps seen by the Romans as a leader who could control the Iceni. But then everything changed. In 60 AD, Prasutagus died without a male heir, leaving his kingdom to his two daughters and the Roman Emperor Nero. However, the Romans ignored his will and decided to call in debts. The lands and property of leading Iceni tribe members were confiscated, and people were deprived of their allied status, effectively reducing them to the level of slaves. And then Rome made a terrible mistake. The kingdom and household were plundered as if they were spoils of war, one by Roman officers, the other by Roman slaves. To begin with, his widow Boudica was flogged and her daughters were raped. The Iceni chiefs were deprived of their hereditary estates, as if the entire country had been given to the Romans. The king's own relatives were treated like slaves. The Romans also had retired soldiers settling in Camulodunum, who had evicted the native population and confiscated their homes and lands, treating them like convicts and slaves. The Temple of Claudius was particularly offensive, an obvious fortress of foreign rule that had to be supported by the people Rome was oppressing. For Cassius Dio, the primary issue was money. Procurator Decius Catus had confiscated money Claudius had given to elite Britons, and Seneca, Nero's teacher and advisor, suspicious of his investment, demanded repayment of money he had lent to local leaders at high interest. Boudica rebelled, and not just her. In 60 or 61 AD, while Roman governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus was on a campaign against the island of Mona, modern Anglesey, off the northwest coast of Wales, a refuge for British rebels and a stronghold of the Druids, the Iceni conspired with their neighbors the Trinovants among others to rebel. Boudica was their leader. According to Tacitus, the rebels were inspired by the example of Arminius, prince of the Cherusei, who drove the Romans from Germany in 9 AD, and by their own ancestors who drove Julius Caesar from Britain. Cassius Dio says that initially Boudica used a form of divination, releasing a hair from the folds of her dress and interpreting which direction it ran, and invoked Andraste, the goddess of victory. The rebellion grew rapidly. According to Cassius Dio, she had as many as 120,000 soldiers. Boudica's army is said to have reached approximately 230,000. Although modern historians believe these figures are exaggerated, one thing is certain: this was a massive rebellion. The first target was Camulodunum, modern Colchester. The Iceni and Trinovants, amid confusion during omens and prophecies, the colonists requested help from the procurator. The few soldiers sent from Londinium were not enough, and the town was quickly occupied and plundered. Roman soldiers took refuge in the temple, But after 2 days, it too fell. Tacitus notes the greed of the Romans and the ambition of men like Catus Decianus for the savagery of the Britons in the revolt. Legate Quintus Petilius Cerealis brought the 9th Legion from the fortress at modern Lincoln or Longthorpe, but they did not arrive in time. After a 2-day siege, the Colonia was engulfed in flames, and those who took refuge in the temple complex burned with the fortress. Boudica took advantage of the momentum from the destruction of Camulodunum and ambushed Cerealis's 9th Legion en route from the colony and almost completely destroyed it. This was one of the biggest defeats the Roman army had experienced in Britain up to that point. Now the road to Londinium, modern London, was open. By this time, Suetonius had heard of the rebellion and began marching his forces south. He arrived at Londinium before Boudica, but the settlement was weakly fortified, and with only a few thousand men, Suetonius decided to abandon the town to the rebels. Londinium suffered the same fate as Camulodunum, with Boudica's forces razing it and killing and torturing those who could not evacuate. Archaeological excavations have found a thick layer of burning from Boudica's destruction. The first version of London became ash. Verulamium, modern St. Albans, would be their next target, and again Suetonius refused to defend the town, leaving it to be freely plundered, burned, and destroyed by the warrior queen. Having destroyed 3 major Roman cities, Boudica now seemed unstoppable. According to the Roman historian Tacitus, Boudica's rebels massacred 70,000 Romans and pro-Roman Britons. Some sources say the death toll was between 70,000 to 80,000. As Tacitus recorded, neither before nor after was Britain ever in a more disturbed or dangerous state. But Suetonius did not give up. Paulinus had with him on his march from Anglesey the entire Legio Vicesimi Valeria Victrix, 20th Legion, brave and victorious, a detachment of Legio Quatuordecimi Gemina, 14th Twin Legion, and auxiliaries he could summon from nearby bases, totaling approximately 10,000 armed men. He was far outnumbered, but Suetonius was an experienced general. Tacitus says, Suetonius already had the 14th Legion, a detachment from the 20th, and auxiliaries from nearby stations, totaling approximately 10,000 armed men, prepared to abandon delay and make a battle. He chose a position approached by a narrow defile and secured behind by a forest, first satisfied that there was no sign of the enemy except in front, and that the plain there was bare and did not allow suspicion of an ambush. The legionaries were stationed in tight ranks, light armed troops on both sides, and cavalry massed on the extreme flanks. Facing him was Boudica's massive army. The Britons moved cheerfully in every direction in companies and cavalry groups. They were in unprecedented numbers, and confidence was so high that they even brought their wives to witness the victory and installed them in wagons they had positioned just above the edge of the plain. This was a huge mistake. The wagons would block the escape route. Before the battle began, both leaders tried to motivate their soldiers. Tacitus recounts Boudica's speech to her followers. "But now," she said, "I come not as one descended from noble ancestry, but as one of the people to avenge my lost freedom, my scourged body, the outraged chastity of my daughters. Roman lust has gone so far that not our persons, nor even age or virginity, have been left unpolluted. But heaven is on the side of a righteous vengeance. A legion which dared to fight has been destroyed. The rest are hiding in their camps or looking anxiously for a way to escape. They will not sustain even the noise and shout of thousands, much less our attack and blows. If you weigh well the forces of the armies and the causes of the war, you must in this battle either conquer or die. This is a woman's resolve. As for men, they may live and be slaves." Suetonius also addressed his own soldiers. Tacitus also wrote that Suetonius addressed his legionaries, "Disregard the clamors of these savages. There are more women than men in their ranks." Then the battle began. The Battle of Watling Street began with a fierce assault by the British forces, hoping to overwhelm the Romans with their numbers. However, the Roman infantry held their ground and formed a shield wall, which protected them from enemy attacks. The Roman cavalry then attacked the British flank, creating chaos and confusion in their ranks. Thus, thanks to Suetonius's clever choice of battlefield, Boudica's superior numbers provided no advantage in the narrow space and actually worked against them, as the crowded mass pressed together provided easy targets for the Romans. The Romans showed no mercy even to women. The pack animals themselves were speared and added to the pile of corpses. In a single engagement, the Britons were almost completely destroyed due to their overconfidence in superior numbers, their disorder, and lack of common training or military discipline. The Romans pursued them into the forest, killing many and capturing others. Tacitus claims that 80,000 Britons and 400 Romans were killed in the battle. Modern historians find these figures exaggerated, but one thing is certain: Boudica's army was destroyed. After the battle, Boudica is said by Tacitus to have committed suicide by taking poison, but in Agricola, written nearly 20 years earlier, he mentions nothing of suicide and attributes the end of the rebellion to Socordia, indifference. Cassius Dio says Boudica fell ill, died, and was given a splendid burial. Boudica's burial place is unknown and is probably somewhere in southern Britain. Modern speculations about its location lack serious evidence and have not reached consensus among archaeologists or historians. Historian Gaius Suetonius Tranquillus writes that the crisis nearly convinced Nero to abandon Britain, but when the rebellion was definitively ended, the occupation of Britain continued. Fearing that Suetonius's punitive actions against British tribes would lead to further rebellion, Nero replaced him with the more conciliatory Publius Petronius Turpilianus. Boudica's defeat consolidated Roman rule in southern Britain. It marked the end of resistance to Roman rule in much of southern Britain, a period that lasted until 410 AD. Never again would there be another British rebellion against the Roman presence in Britain. Cooperation between the two civilizations was achieved. Thanks to Rome's helping hand, steps were taken to connect the region with the wider world, as the Britons no longer sought independence through violent uprisings. But Boudica's legacy never died. She was forgotten for centuries, but was rediscovered in the 18th and 19th centuries. In the Victorian era, Boudica became a symbol of British freedom and resistance. A massive statue of her was erected beside Westminster Bridge, in a war chariot, with her daughters defiant. The irony is that Boudica defeated Rome, but Britain eventually became the heir to Roman civilization. Roman laws, Roman roads, Roman culture, all became part of Britain. And centuries later, when Britain built its own empire, it modeled itself on the Roman Empire. But Boudica's story teaches us something important. Throughout history, women were not just passive victims. They also became leaders, commanded armies, challenged empires. Boudica was flogged, her daughters were raped, her kingdom was stolen. But she did not surrender. She rose up, gathered 100,000 people, and launched one of the greatest rebellions the Roman Empire had ever seen. She burned 3 Roman cities. She killed 70,000 to 80,000 Romans. She forced Nero to consider abandoning Britain. And although she was eventually defeated, her name was never forgotten. Today, Boudica is a symbol of courage, resistance, and fighting for freedom. She was a woman who stood up against oppression, fought against injustice, and never gave up. Even in defeat, her spirit lived on. And perhaps the most important lesson is this: history is written by the powerful. Rome won, so Boudica's story was told by Roman historians. But between the lines of the story, the truth of an extraordinary woman shines through. A queen who was flogged but not broken, defeated but not forgotten. So, did you know Boudica's story? What do you think about this incredible warrior queen? Could she have defeated Rome? You can share in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and turn on notifications. In the next video, we'll discover another forgotten hero of history. See you soon.